Hey guys, and welcome to the next episode of the Random Watch Dude. So today's video is actually a follow-up video to the video that I made quite recently about Quartz watches. If you recall, I was comparing two Quartz watches. I had the Tag Heuer 1000, which is a neo-vintage tag from 1989, and I also had my 36mm Omega Seamaster, which goes back to about 2008. Both Quartz watches. If you haven't seen that video already, take a look at it. It was just where I was basically saying, why is it that Quartz watches aren't as popular as they used to be? Because of course during the 70s, 80s and into the early 90s, you know, the Quartz was all the rage. And of course since then the Swiss brands have kind of forced the mechanical watches back into vogue, back into fashion. I will add also, because of course, don't forget that we always talk about the Swiss watch industry and we forget to talk about the likes of Seiko and Citizen and Loris and all those Seconda and all those other Timex and other brand. You know, these guys are all pumping out a lot of Quartz watches, of course, but they also pump out a lot of mechanical watches too. And just speaking of watches, quick wristwatch check. Today I've got on my, I was going to say Omega, it's a Rolex GMT Master 2 BLNR. This is the Batgirl on the Jubilee bracelet, as you can see there. And I'll just clarify one point, guys. I mentioned in a video just recently that I made about my woeful AD experience that I might consider selling this watch. Don't worry about it, guys. It was just a moment of weakness, a bit of a knee tremble moment. I'm not going to sell this watch. I'm not going to sell any of my Rolex watches. It was just one of those fickle moments that you have as a watch collector when you think, you know, is it time to reduce the collection? Is it time after a bad experience to get rid of a watch and maybe bring in a new one? That was just a moment I was having when I made that video due to a rather poor experience that I'd had at one of the ADs. Not going to touch on that anymore, guys. I'm not going to make any more videos about that experience, other than to say, just lastly, I have taken myself off of the list now for Rolex at both of the ADs. One of which I actually still have a very good relationship with and will actually continue to make visits to, but I'm not on the list for any further Rolex. And I may make a video on that a little bit later, about, you know, where I've moved on to, you know, the next stage in my watch journey. But right now I want to talk about Quartzes, guys. Quartz is precious. I want to talk about Quartz watches because I really like Quartz watches, you know. I mean, I've got a thing for Quartz. I was wearing my Tag Heuer 1000 yesterday. The great thing about it is I just popped it on my wrist. I didn't have to get up and set the time, set the date, you know, check that the crown was down tight. You know, I didn't have to do any of that. I just picked it up out of the watch box. It had the right date, it had the right time, because it's a Quartz, of course, so I don't need to worry about it telling the right time. And I wore it for the morning, and then in the afternoon I stuck it back in the box and I put on my, what did I put on then? My Omega Planet Ocean 2208.5. I chucked that on as well. So I went from a 37mm Quartz to a 45mm mechanical watch, which, by the way, I had to set the time and date on, which took me a couple of minutes. So back to the Quartz issue, guys, because this is one that I think there's still some issues that we need to tackle here with regards to Quartz. Now, I put a poll out after I made that video recently about Quartz and why I think Quartz is the way to go, you know, for any serious watch collector, for some key reasons. Key reasons being the price of Quartz is generally lower, the servicing cost is absolutely significantly lower, and of course, you know, it goes without saying, you've got a reliable and accurate movement. You don't have to worry about the accuracy. So those were the advantages that I touched on in the video, and I then put out a poll and I asked the question, why is it that mechanical watches are considered far more popular and are far more popular in terms of volume sales amongst watch enthusiasts? And the answer to that poll, I guess, wasn't a surprise to me, but I'll just read out the top two answers, the top two reasons why you guys think that mechanical watches are far more popular than Quartz. 67% of you guys, 2/3 of you, said that mechanical watches are more interesting technically. And I'm going to come back to that after I've told you that 21% of you said that Quartz watches lack soul. Now, so 67% think that mechanical watches are technically more interesting, and 21% think Quartz watches lack soul. So with a quick little bit of mental arithmetic, guys, tells me that 88% of the answer was based around the fact that essentially a quartz watch is not as interesting. It doesn't have soul and it doesn't have technical interest. So a quartz watch is less interesting than a mechanical watch. So tell that to Grand Seiko with their 9F movement, with their 9F quartz movement. Tell that to Grand Seiko, because technically that movement, I think, is just as interesting as the Omega 8900 coaxial, all singing, all dancing, anti-magnetic movement. Tell that to Grand Seiko is what I can say to you. So, and also another aspect I have, if mechanical watches are technically more interesting, have any of you actually ever bought like a $300 or $400 Seiko and had a look at the exhibition case back and seen how boring as batshit the back of that watch is, even with the spinning rotor? It's a boring looking thing. It's not decorated. It's nothing fancy about it. The accuracy, if you're lucky, you'll get it to within 20 seconds a day. So you see where I'm going here, guys, is some mechanical watches may be technically interesting. I personally think the vast majority of them aren't. I would also go as far as to say that most quartz watches aren't technically interesting. But neither a quartz watch nor a mechanical watch, and I'm sorry to disappoint you guys if I'm bursting a little bubble here, but they're actually not real organic objects. They're inorganic objects. They don't have a soul. I'm sorry to say this, they don't have a soul. They don't really talk to you. When you think a watch is singing to you, it's the way that watch makes you feel, but it's not actually a watch that has a soul. So when we say quartz watches lack soul, I think we need to be clear about this, is quartz watches do not invoke a specific feeling in us. And this is going to take me to my key point, guys. And one of the comments that I had, I think summed it up probably better than I could at the time. And this is a comment which was made by Jay Sterling in the comments section to the poll. And he made it a really, really good succinct statement, which is one of the things I'm not very good at, as you will have noticed. And he said, the Swiss had to differentiate themselves during the quartz crisis. So in this one sentence, he's pretty much summed up my feelings about why quartz aren't more popular. The Swiss had to differentiate themselves in the quartz crisis, because when the Japanese invented, or certainly mass marketed and mass produced, the quartz movements, it absolutely smashed the Swiss watch industry. It nearly destroyed it. And for a while there, the Swiss brands realised that they couldn't carry on trying to pump out mechanical watches, which were not as accurate, more expensive to service, more expensive to produce, and therefore more expensive to sell. So they tried to meet the demand for quartz at that time for a while. And Omega, as you know, Omega and Tag Heuer and Grand Seiko continue to do that for quite some time, and still do in the case of Tag Heuer and Grand Seiko. But essentially what happened here, guys, and Jay's absolutely summed it up. He couldn't have summed it up better. The Swiss had to differentiate to survive. So what the Swiss had to do was find a way to make mechanical watches cool again. And so what did they do? They started to come up with new designs, patented products. They started to work on the magnetism, the anti-magnetism. They started to work on the power reserves. And here we are in a situation, guys, in the 21st century, where quartz is still, I would argue actually that quartz watches are probably still more common by volume than mechanical watches. However, the luxury watch market is pretty much turned its nose up at quartz, hasn't it? Apart from the Grand Seikos, I would say, and to a degree the Tags. You know, the luxury market, us guys that are buying luxury watches have pretty much turned our noses up at quartz. And I'm going to tell you why I think that is. I'm going to tell you that I think the reason that most of us luxury watch enthusiasts don't like quartz more is because we've been told that mechanical watches are better because the amount of marketing dollars which gets pumped in to the watch brands like Rolex, Omega, Tudor, Tag Heuer, for example, the amount of money that those guys are pumping into their marketing, for one, is basically brainwashing us into thinking that mechanical watches are superior. And the other side of it is a lot of these big watch brands now, they've gone in-house. And I think we're getting to a stage now where us watch enthusiasts are starting to realise that there's a lot of BS around the term in-house. I think a lot of us have cottoned onto it now. The reason that the Rolexes and the Omegas and all of these big brands have really been pushing the in-house marketing so hard and coming up with all these patented new ideas and new products is because, guys, they want you to believe that a mechanical watch is superior. They want you to think it's a better product, and because it's a better product, you're going to pay more money. So this is all about marketing, guys, and nothing to do with the tech. I'd say the one good thing that's come out of all of the, I guess, innovation that we've seen over the last, let's say, 20 years is power reserves have got better. You know, but a power reserve of 40 hours is pretty good, which is what the old ETA used to have. And now we've got watches like, I mean, this Rolex, for example, this will run, although Rolex will say in their marketing that this will run for 70 hours, it goes for an awful lot longer than that, guys. This watch will run for 4 days. 4 days this watch will run for if it's got a full charge, and I just leave it because I've gone back to my watch box 3 or 4 days after I took this off out of the rotation and it's still going. It's staggering sometimes. I'm sure I'm getting about 90 hours out of this watch. I'm certain of it. So the power reserve, no question, has got a lot better. But all of the other stuff, guys, I think it's just fluff. I mean, do you actually need it? And what was wrong with the old ETA 2824 that used to go in basically pretty much every half-decent Swiss watch? It had 40 hours power reserve, but it was just as accurate. So the whole accuracy thing is fluff, to be honest with you. I personally think that's marketing fluff, and I'm getting back to this. I'm tying all this in with the whole concept that the reason we think mechanical watches are better is because we've been told they're better by the watch companies that want us to buy their product and pay more money for it. Tell me what you think, guys. I'm not going to ramble about this for too long because a lot of you are telling me that my videos are too long. So I'm going to cut this subject short now and leave a few questions open there about marketing and about brainwashing. And let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know whether I'm, just kind of completely going down the wrong track here, or do you think that the vast majority of us guys have fallen for the marketing fluff and puffery of the Swiss watch market? And the reality is we should all go out there and start looking at some Quartz watches for our collection. Let me know, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.